Hey, what's up guys, Divide here and we're back with another Warlock build. Now this is a new Warlock build using the new Exotic boots and this thing wrecks. You're going to be using Empowering Rifts with Font of Might and Child of the Old Gods, which means you're going to be getting a 15% debuff, a 25% buff, as well as another 20% buff from the Empowering Rift, which actually makes this the best DPS in the game for a solo player. The best thing about this build though is that you can stop overloads with any weapon you want, and it doesn't conflict with other champion mods. So you can stop an overload with a hand cannon and still stop an unstoppable with that same hand cannon. Crazy, right? It gets better. Every single kill will refresh Devour, giving you instant max health, giving you grenade energy to get those elemental wells, which will start the mass chain of Void Chaos. Now if this is something that you're going to enjoy, then be sure to hit that thumbs up and let me know in the comments what you think about the new Exotic boots for the Warlock. And now without further delay, let's dive deeper. Now, like all my build videos, if you enjoy these and you want to see more, there is a full playlist link down below that you might want to check out later, which is expanding rapidly as we move further into the season. But the build we are going to go over today is the new Warlock Void 3.0 build. I did make a recent Void build for the Warlock, which you guys seem to like, and we did use the Controversy Hold for that one. But with this one we are going to be using the Secant Filaments, the new Exotic boots for the Warlock, which is going to make our Empowering Rifts actually worth using, especially as a solo player, which is amazing for doing things like a solo or Master Lost sector. Now if you're still farming these and you are having a hard time in those sectors, you can watch my other build video in the playlist below, which is, I'd say, about the same sort of level as this one. Both this and my other build are just as good as each other, although you'll probably be a little bit more protected with the other one. But with this one, you'll be playing a little more aggressive, but with better DPS. So how this build works is you will first place down an Empowering Rift. This will activate Devour, which will give you instant max health and grenade energy on every kill, and you don't need to stay in a rift to keep that buff, but you'll then use a grenade to spawn an elemental well if you don't have one already, pick that up and then go on a void killing spree with volatile rounds. Once that ends, you should have both your grenade and rift back. At that point you will then get a grenade kill for another elemental well, place down your rift, shoot the boss or enemy to send your void sword to weaken them, then you'll deal DPS with void weapons. That will achieve your max damage with all buffs and debuffs activated at once, and that damage is pretty insane considering I was using a normal legendary rocket with no DPS perks. You don't have to use void weapons for DPS, you can still use a Galahorn or whatever you want, but you will lose out on the 25% damage from Font of Might. Now that is basically how the build works, but when going into endgame you will need to play a bit safer because you got to remember it's not a healing rift when you are doing DPS, and I wouldn't rely on being healed by your void sword too much because it's not as effective when it comes to endgame. So I'd still recommend killing the odd ad every now and again for Devour to restore your health. So to set this build up, the first thing that you're going to want to do is make sure you have at least one void weapon, whether that is an energy or a heavy. If you can get both the energy and heavy to be void, that's even better, but I'd recommend a Funnelweb because it's literally the new Recluse and it's purely amazing. You could use something like a bottom dollar, but the main reason is because your volatile rounds caused by using a void weapon is going to be doing all the ad clearing work for you. But on top we are also buffing our void weapons DPS, so it makes sense to have void weapons on. For the heavy, you could go with a Deathbringer or a legendary rocket. Now you can also use things like a Lee Monarch, that would be pretty effective along with a Ruinous Effigy, and obviously a Deathbringer, but using a solar heavy ain't too bad either, so if you want to use a Sleeper, a Parasite or a Galley, then you can do that because you'll still get a little buff DPS on those. But the exotic armor we are going to be using is the Secant Filaments, and we will look at those in just a moment, but as I mentioned before, you can use the Controversy Hold with a few slight adjustments to the build, and that again is linked below. Now before we go through the exotic, let's just first take a look at the subclass. So we are going to be a Void Nova Bomb for Void 3.0, but you can use any Void super that you prefer. You will need to use an Empowering Rift as the exotic will be pointless without it, so slot that on, and then a Vortex grenade because those are the best grenades in the game. For the aspects you want Chaos Accelerant to increase the size and duration of the Vortex grenade, and then Child of the Old Gods where casting your Rift creates a Void Soul, and when you DPS a target with a weapon, your Void Soul will fly to them and drain them, doing damage and weakening them for that 15% debuff, and at the same time that will give us health while the boss is being drained, which does help a little but not too much. When you're killing adds in your Rift though with the Void Soul, you should generate a fair amount of Rift energy back as well. In the last build we used Feed the Void, but with our Exotic, that will basically give us Devour, which will then restore our health and grenades when we are killing enemies, while also refreshing our Devour timer. So we pretty much get all three aspects in one. For the Fragments, we have Echo of Expulsion for adds to explode when our Void abilities kill them, Echo of Remnants for our grenade to last longer, and Echo of Undermining so that our Void grenades can weaken targets. Be careful if you're using this in a team that has Divinity, because the weakened grenade will actually override the Divinity, giving you the 15% debuff from the grenade instead of the 30% from Divinity. Now back to the exotic boots. Secant Filaments. By the way, you can get these from the legendary campaign as the final reward that you can choose, but I'd actually recommend farming for it in a legend or master lost sector for the high stat roll. Anyway, this reads, casting an Empowering Rift will grant Devour. Damage dealt by you and your allies from within your Empowering Rift will disrupt combatants. Now this is no joke, and it stacks. So you can use, say, an Unstoppable Hand Cannon to stop an Unstoppable, and then also stop the overloads with that same hand cannon while in your Rift. And with this build, it's not going to be difficult to have your Rift up most of the time, so this exotic is perfect for a solo player who doesn't want to use multiple champion mods in their builds. For the mods though, we are going to be running Elemental Wells to buff our damage and basically just make the build much better because they work really well with Void 3.0. So the first mod on the list is Elemental Ordnance, and this is to spawn a Void Elemental Well when getting a kill with our grenade. Then we'll use that well on Well of Tenacity to reduce the amount of damage we take from combatants, which I believe is 25%. Then we're using Font of Might to increase our weapon damage, which again is 25%, but you do have to use a Void weapon, remember that. All this mod will be pretty pointless and you may as well just replace it. But alongside that, we are going to be using Volatile Flow, one of the best mods in the game right now that is just broken as hell. Now to keep up with the consistency of spawning wells, we're going to be also using the Elemental Armaments to spawn wells randomly when getting final blows with a weapon that matches our subclass energy type. Man, that was a long sentence. You can use this, or you can use Reaping Wellmaker. The thing is, with Reaping Wellmaker, after activating your class, I kinda don't want to run out and pick a well up, you know? So I'd rather stay in the Rift, so I mean, you can use it, but it's down to personal preference of which mod you'd rather use. For me, that is the first one. Now for our normal mods, I'm using Harmonic Siphon. This is to spawn an orb of power when we defeat an enemy with our Void weapons rapidly. I'll tell you why that's good in just a minute when we get there, but we also got our Ammo Finder mod for our heavy weapon. Then for the gauntlets, you want your champion mod if you need it. If you don't, put on this one here, but put it on twice. That'll help with getting our Rift back quicker. Next up, we have the Thermoshock plating to resist incoming solar and arc damage, as well as Void Resist, which needs to be in Void Armor. Then for the legs, Insulation to reduce our class ability cooldown for picking up that orb that will generate from our weapon as I mentioned a second ago. And then we'll have our Scavenger mod. Now for class, you can do a few things here. I'd recommend keeping an Overload Grenade on anyway as a backup, if for some reason you don't have a Rift, which is very unlikely, or the Overload is rushing you. But then I'd also put on a Lucent Finisher so that you can keep getting heavy ammo back when you are finishing a champion. If you don't have champions, remove those mods and put on some more ability cooldown ones instead. In the artifacts, your main priority for unlocking mods should be Volatile Flow and Lucent Finisher. Those two ones are the ones you'll be using a lot with this build in endgame PvE. For your stats, you 100% want to max out Recovery and then Discipline. That way you'll be able to consistently throw grenades all the time without the need of Controversy Hold, as well as being able to place rifts down one after another. Just make sure you throw those grenades and pick up those elemental wells and try and get kills with your Void Sword weakening enemies. Otherwise there may be a slight delay in getting your rift back, but it shouldn't cause you a major problem. Now this build, is it better than the other Warlock Void build? I'd say it's about the same. I'd say the other one has more survivability and this one has more DPS, but both will do a really good job. For me, I'm probably going to stick with my other Void build just because I prefer Controversy Hold, but do give me your thoughts on this build down below. Anyway, that about sums up the video for today for your new Warlock Void build for the new Void 3.0 subclass in Destiny 2 Witch Queen, Season of the Risen. As always, next you should check out that playlist below for more top builds that you may be interested in for Season 16, and if you liked this one, then leaving a thumbs up is always appreciated. But for now, give this one a try, and I'll catch you Warlocks very soon for the next video.